Hey YouTubers, it's Charlie. This is going to be my Doctor Strange Easter egg video. Just careful for spoilers if you haven't seen the movie yet. Some of them were really obvious, some of them even tease Marvel characters that we haven't seen yet. So here we go. So most of these are in chronological order, but let's start with some of the big ones first. So most of you probably saw that the Eye of Agamotto really was the time gem, even though they didn't actually call it out as the time gem. You have to look at him messing with the apple, the way he traps Dormammu in that loop, and then later when Wong says, you shouldn't be walking around the streets of New York with an infinity stone wrapped around your neck. So then it all kind of clicks in your head, oh my god, time gem. But as he takes it off, he hasn't mastered it yet. He'll also probably use it to learn to see through time, use it for more of the clairvoyant stuff that it can do in the comics. So now we're down to the Soul Gem, which will probably show up somewhere during Thor Ragnarok. But then right at the beginning of the movie, when he's performing that operation, they're arguing about Chuck Mangione. Is it 1977 versus 1978? The original Doctor Strange TV show debuted in 1978. Stan Lee, one of his big missions once he became publisher of Marvel, was to sell the movie and TV rights and get stuff going. He got that Doctor Strange thing going. That and the Hulk TV show during the 70s were some of Marvel's first big pushes into Hollywood. But the problem is that the Doctor Strange TV show debuted alongside Roots. So naturally, Roots, one of the most popular TV shows in the history of America, just completely destroyed Doctor Strange. So barely anybody saw it, and that was the end of the Doctor Strange TV show. When he's in the Lambo, before he gets into his accident, he's thumbing through patients that he's thinking about taking on. He talks about an army colonel and experimental armor that was hurt. That's probably Rhodey from Civil War, even though the director said that it wasn't. But they also talk about another person who was struck by lightning. That might be Captain Marvel. They did say there was a Captain Marvel Easter egg, and when asked about this, the director was also very tight-lipped. He was basically just hinted that, yeah, that's probably going to be Captain Marvel. But just remember that they've already confirmed they're changing Captain Marvel's origin story for the movies. It's not going to be the same way it worked in the comics. It'll probably have something to do with her absorbing cosmic energy, but that might be what that lightning bolt is. Going way back to Winter Soldier, Stephen Strange got a big shout out. He was on Hydra's list. Kevin Feige explained that that's only because of his extreme aptitude, because as of that time, he was still just a regular doctor. So not because they knew that he would become Sorcerer Supreme, just because he was smart enough that he could become a threat to Hydra one day. This one's kind of funny. The Benjamin Bratt basketball scene. So when he goes to see Pangborn and ask him how he was healed when he was incurable, Benjamin Bratt's playing basketball in a scene that's very similar to the one where he was playing basketball in the really terrible Catwoman Halle Berry movie. So if you don't remember that, there's this really weird basketball scene. So Pangborn, Benjamin Bratt playing basketball in this, just a nice wink at that. Most of these Easter eggs, visual references, characters connect Doctor Strange to the other Marvel films, the greater Marvel universe, but you can also see the Avengers Tower in Midtown from the New York City skyline, so you're literally seeing stuff from other Marvel movies. But some more comic book deep cuts. Early in the film, when he gets into his accident, the doctor that he chastised, Nick, is actually Nicodemus West from the Oath storyline, the person who actually becomes a pretty big villain. Later in the movie, there's another scene that's directly ripped right out of the Oath storyline when he astrally projects and helps Christine operate on himself, just like giving her directions on his body. When he's first training with Baron Mordo, there are 3 magical artifacts that get a shout out. There's the Staff of the Living Tribunal, so everybody freaks out. That was probably one of the biggest ones, just confirming that the Living Tribunal exists in the Marvel Universe, even if we don't see it for a long, long time. There's the Wand of Watum, which shows up later in the movie. Wong actually uses it. It's really just like a super powerful wand from the comics. Works like most wizard wands do. And then the Vaulting Boots of Valtor, which we actually do not see. But that was just the Harry Potter setup for the Cloak of Levitation. The wand chooses the wizard, just like the cloak chooses him later. One of the books that Doctor Strange is learning magic from is the Book of the Vishanti. There are 3 different Vishanti: Oshtur, Hoggoth, and Agamotto. They're basically like the 3 most powerful magical beings in the Marvel Universe, but the way the movie uses Agamotto is that they say that he was the first of their order, like the first Sorcerer Supreme, like an actual person. One of the other books that he learns from is written by Cagliostro, includes passages from a 31st century sorcerer, Cisneg, who basically leaves notes from the future, and then the Darkhold, which is also being used on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. right now, so there's your Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. connection. They kind of subtly reference the Darkhold during the movie. Of course, one of the most powerful dark magic books in the world would be referenced during Doctor Strange. Most of you probably spotted the Stan Lee cameo when they crash into the bus. He's actually reading Aldous Huxley's Doors of Perception, which is like a 1954 essay about experiences tripping on mescaline, which a lot of people feel like was inspiration, like this 1954 book about taking drugs, creating the Doctor Strange character in 1963. So you can all fantasize about Stan Lee and Steve Ditko taking mescaline back in the 60s and using it to come up with the Doctor Strange character. When Doctor Strange is first introduced to the Sorcerer Supreme, you meet a one-armed Master Hamir. He's actually Wong's father in the comics, but the movie doesn't use him that way. The mind trip across the multiverse that the Ancient One sends him on just to kind of open his mind is inspired by 2001 Space Odyssey. Like, you even see the bleeding colors. The soundtrack even sounds a little bit like the music from 2001 Space Odyssey, but a lot of the visuals, along with the visuals in the Dark Dimension, are taken directly from Steve Ditko's illustrations. Super trippy. The malice and hunger universe that she was talking about is obviously the Dark Dimension, but they also kind of use that as the Cancerverse of the Marvel Universe. So you can think of the Dark Dimension as doubling as the Cancerverse of the comics, which is basically just like a Darkest Timeline universe with a bunch of evil versions of all the good characters in the regular Marvel Universe. More comic book Easter eggs. Daniel Drum, the previous guardian of the New York Sanctum, who's killed midway in the movie, is actually the brother of Dr. Voodoo in the comics, who eventually himself became Sorcerer Supreme after Doctor Strange. So maybe we'll see Dr. Voodoo in the movies eventually. I'll do a sequel video, but beyond Baron Mordo and Dormammu, they haven't said much about what they're going to be doing in the sequel. But speaking of which, Dormammu, so he goes to the Dark Dimension. Dormammu, I've come to bargain. Very funny sequence. But the thing is that Benedict Cumberbatch also voices Dormammu the same way he voiced Sauron during the Hobbit movies. So if you didn't watch the Hobbit movies, he does mocap for the dragon Smaug, but he also does a voice for the Necromancer, who is just a form of the Dark Lord Sauron before he pulls himself together and becomes that great eye. So Benedict Cumberbatch has a long history of doing big, formless, void, evil monsters. So that's kind of the way they use Dormammu in this too. They said the reason for doing that is they wanted Dormammu to feel like a really dark expression of Doctor Strange. Like Doctor Strange wields this almost infinite power, so they wanted Dormammu to feel like a dark version of that. And they also said that the reason that Dormammu looks that way is for the benefit of Doctor Strange. Like Dormammu doesn't need to take form, but he did that mostly for the benefit of Strange, just to try and freak him out. But I imagine the next time he shows up in the movies, he'll look a little closer to the way he does in the comics. He's so powerful that in his home dimension, the one that he completely controls, he can take any form that he wants. The end of the movie, obviously, Caecilius and the last of his followers get sucked into the Dark Dimension. They slowly get transformed into these formless creatures with an eye in the center of their face. Those are the mindless ones, which are very dangerous, but it's just a way of showing you what living in Dormammu's world is like. He basically turns you into a mindless one, so it's almost like a living hell. So just to end things, of course, the big 2 post-credit scenes. Everybody freaked out when we saw Thor, just implying he's going to help Thor and Loki find Odin. He's somewhere on Earth. That might happen at the beginning of Thor Ragnarok. So by all accounts, we'll get a little bit of Doctor Strange during Thor Ragnarok. But there's also a couple other things happening in this. So it looks like there's a time jump because he's wearing the gloves that Doctor Strange wears in the comics. He didn't have gloves earlier in the movie, but he also keeps a list of magical threats to the Earth. Loki is on that list. So he's basically saying that he wants to get Loki the hell off of the Earth so he doesn't cause any trouble. So they're going to find Odin as fast as possible. But the second one, the Baron Mordo post-credits scene. So most people were just kind of waiting for Baron Mordo to do something evil during the movie. He's a big Doctor Strange villain in the comics, taking the magic from Pangborn, leaving him crippled again. So when he says there are entirely too many sorcerers, he's obviously going to continue going around killing people who have magic so that there are only a couple of sorcerers left on the earth. So they'll follow up on that in the sequel. And even though they haven't officially announced the sequel, Doctor Strange crushed its opening weekend, so there will be a Doctor Strange 2 sometime either later in Phase 3 or really early in Phase 4, but depending on whatever their schedule is and Benedict Cumberbatch's schedule, so just expect the Marvel schedule, the movie schedule, to get shuffled just a little bit to make room for that. But let me know if there are any other Easter eggs that you guys spotted that I didn't mention in the video. There was a whole bunch of stuff in there. Easter eggs for the TV show back in the 70s, for the comics like the classic Steve Ditko comics, for the more modern comics like The Oath, and for the other Marvel movies themselves. So we all know that Doctor Strange is going to be a part of the Avengers. They're going to tease some Illuminati stuff that might play out later in Phase 4, but I'll totally do a video for what I think they should do during that sequel. But the follow-up, more multiverse stuff, more Doctor Strange stuff from the comics. But the movie was a lot of fun. It'll be really cool to see them try and get even weirder with the sequel, just in the way that Guardians of the Galaxy looked very different from other Marvel movies, in the way they really doubled down on that for the second movie. I'm so excited about Guardians of the Galaxy 2. I really love the idea of Marvel doing really weird movies. So a lot of you have been asking about other Marvel stuff, Spider-Man movie. There's a rumor that there's going to be a teaser trailer December 2nd, but that's a Friday, and I haven't been able to find a lot of information about that. So if I can find some more concrete stuff, I'll do a video about that. But more Doctor Strange, more Avengers later this week, so be sure to subscribe to get that. Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is on break, so is The Flash, so I'll be doing some bonus videos tomorrow on Tuesday. While you guys wait for that to post, you can click here for an update on Spider-Man Homecoming, what's going on with the trailer, when we're going to see footage, and you can click here to learn more about what's going on with Thor Ragnarok. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. Let's high five. I'll see you guys tonight.
There are two types of beings in the universe.